so beautiful. I never thought that being an animator would be this amazing.
I've actually never opened Houdini, but in my mind, it's software for like big VFX in the movies.
You can totally abuse it and break it and use it for doing weirder stuff. It's got this sort of philosophy of being all about proceduralism. Instead of building the thing, you're building a tool to build the thing. The people that are making it really care about the people that are using the software and really care about the software itself. It feels really good to use a software like that.
That seems the perfect reason to use a software.
This new release is like the best release that they've had in a long time. We're all working on the short film for SideFX. We are kind of stress testing it for that. It's going to show Houdini is a program that can be used for all this stuff. They're positioning themselves to really like take over the entire CG pipeline potentially one day. And then he came up to me and he was like, "Hey dude, I love your work, by the way."
No way.
And I was like, "No way, dude. Oh my God."
You should have said, "Who are you, sorry?"
That would have been really funny.
Yo, Chris is in the house. Yeah, woohoo, yeah. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're good.
Sometimes I get access to these like buttons on the right-hand side.
Yeah, they added that stuff to Discord recently, and it was a bad idea.
That's a badass t-shirt you've got on.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, I got it just for the Houdini presentation that I was doing with my friend Magnus at Annecy, and we thought it'd be funny to wear them, so now I have it, and now it's one of my favorite t-shirts.
Hello, first of all. It says hello yet.
Great to meet you guys. I've just learned about the podcast like recently through seeing, I think Will Anderson posted and Yonk, and I saw that you guys did one with Olaf Berman that I watched. I'm a huge fan of him.
Oh, brilliant.
And I just was digging through and I saw that way back you did one with Sarah Gunnarsdottir.
Yes.
Who made My Year of Dicks, which is super cool. Like, that's crazy.
Well, thanks for your time and welcome to the VFX process. Can you just introduce yourself, your name, and tell us what you do?
So my name is Christopher Rutledge, and I do a lot of animation stuff, 3D simulated floppy characters that are rendered in a realistic and disturbing kind of manner. I mainly use this software called Houdini, which is really good for doing like simulations and stuff, but it's also really good for doing all the other stuff that I'm doing, which I feel like a lot of other people aren't really using it for, so it's fun to be kind of exploring that. Yeah, I'm just trying to work on short films as much as possible, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm up to.
Amazing. Houdini, I mean, I've actually never opened Houdini, right? But in my mind, it's software typically for like big VFX in the movies, but I guess I'm completely wrong because you can do a hell of a lot more and you use it in many incredible, interesting ways. Can you just tell us a little bit about why you chose Houdini as your or one of your tools that you love to use?
I mean, Houdini, it's been around forever, just like all the other 3D tools. Like Blender's been around forever also. It's always been a bit different because it's got this sort of philosophy of being all about proceduralism, which Blender started to just get into with the geometry nodes and things like that. But Houdini's like at the core always been all kind of like node based. And I think it's had a reputation for a long time for being difficult to learn and only being used by these super specialist kind of effects artists in the industry, like you were saying. But it actually has like a pretty deep history and has been used for a lot more than just that in the past. There was this movie that Disney made years ago called The Wild. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was entirely animated in Houdini. Like they did everything in Houdini, and now a lot of the people that worked on that movie like work for SideFX. While on one hand it's maybe not as like hands-on, and the way that I like to put it is like, let's say, you know, there's the donut tutorial. You model a donut and you use some deformers, and then you put that displacement on there, and then you add the coating and you do some particles for the bits. With Houdini, the way that it would work is more like describing kind of all these sets of rules that it kind of has to step through in order to end up making that donut. And at the end of it, what you can do is you can go all the way back up to the beginning and change that initial input shape to the letter A or the letter B or any other shape you want. And you now have a donut generator that can make a donut in any shape. And so instead of building the thing that you're building a tool to build the thing. With geometry nodes and stuff, I think people are more familiar with this idea of proceduralism, but that's been the big thing that Houdini's been kind of leaning on. But more importantly than that, for me, the reason that I like to use it mainly is just that it feels like the people that are making it really care about the people that are using the software and really care about the software itself, which is a lot more than I could say for a lot of the other options out there, not including Blender. Of course, Blender is also awesome. They're really listening to us, and it feels really, really good to use a software like that. They're adding all the stuff that all the users want them to keep adding into it, and it's just getting better and better.
No, that seems the perfect reason to use the software. We're going to get into talking about your process, and one in particular is Larry, the basketball dog.
Oh, yeah. With TAKESHI MURATA.
Can we just dive into the process and like break that down? I guess how it started and like technically how you did it.
So Larry is a short film that I made with TAKESHI MURATA. He reached out to me at the very end of 2019 after someone else had posted this animation that I made of like a messed up Pikachu on Reddit, and he found it and like found my email somehow and reached out, and he had this dog character, and he had like a test that he had started with doing like a fluid simulation on the dog character. And I think he was just looking for someone to kind of work with who had a deeper understanding of Houdini. He was doing a lot of stuff in C4D and then in Substance Painter and stuff. We were like, cool, let's work on this. And eventually we made a bunch of these loops for a gallery show that he was doing in Tokyo. And then someone from Sundance saw it there, and he already kind of knew them because he'd had stuff in Sundance before. So they asked if he would submit it, and he did. And then he told me about it after it ended up getting in. And I was like, holy crap, that's crazy. So we went to Sundance this year and screened it there, and it was a ton of fun. Yeah, basically in terms of the process of making it, again, he made the character, and then we kind of bounced back and forth a lot on some ideas for different kind of like effects and simulations. And I was kind of showing him like, here's all this cool stuff we could do with varying like viscosity levels and playing with gravity and playing with the dog being like a collider against the fluid sim. But like at the end of the day, it's like, it's mostly fluid sims that we're just like doing really crazy stuff with, which I think is, again, one of the things that I really like about Houdini is it's like, it's used in these big studios for doing crazy VFX shots. You know, it all has this kind of general intended purpose, but like you can totally abuse it and break it and use it for doing weirder stuff. So I think there's so much potential to like explore those tools to do weirder things with it than what they might seem to be intended for. So that was basically the whole idea. Let's just experiment, make tons of stuff. And I mean, there's kind of two different ways you can make films, I feel. There's the like plan everything out, it's like a narrative thing or whatever. And then there's experimental ones where like you're just making lots of experiments and then figuring out how to edit them all together into a film later. And that's more what Larry was, basically.
Is this all in viewport? Can you just break down what we're seeing?
It's pretty much all raw, just like one beauty pass render. Yeah, what I'm doing is like duplicating and time shifting copies of him and stuff.
What about the like, you know, the motion? It looks like motion captured, like the animation clip of him kind of like walking and then falling and getting back up.
It's like definitely a mix of a handful of different mocap clips with some hand keyframed animation on top of all of it. But yeah, that was all basically TAKESHI did that in C4D, I believe, and then we brought it over to Houdini, and then I kind of just like did everything on top of it in Houdini with all the effects and stuff.
It feels like there's a human inside the suit and it's a little bit floppy and you can kind of see it kind of moving, especially the legs.
Part of the idea behind it, I think initially was like, what if we just tried to make this character seem like they're supposed to be like, you know, a Mickey Mouse type iconic sort of mascot character type thing, and we should just try to make him show up in more and more places and make people like wonder kind of like what's the deal with this guy. But yeah, maybe at some point we'll do more Larry stuff. I would definitely love to explore some of that, especially another like film, like a narrative film or something.
I've got a question that I've asked like once or twice before, a great question I find anyway. Is there a tool that would have helped on a past project that doesn't exist?
That doesn't exist. I mean, there's certainly lots of tools that come out for Houdini that I'm like, damn it, if I had this on my last project, it would have saved me so much time. Yeah, in terms of like a specific tool that I wish existed, I don't have a specific answer.
You made a tool called the Idiot Generator, which we can kind of talk about.
If you can call that a tool, yeah, I don't know, yeah. That's a cool thing with Houdini also, is that it's very easy to make your own tools with it. Again, basically, as a byproduct of making any individual project, what you can always do is be like, okay, this is a thing that I want to be able to reuse as a tool later. And then you wrap it up into what's called an HDA. And then you can save that in your library of your own personal HDAs, or you could like sell it on Gumroad or like Patreon or whatever. It's really cool that Houdini's procedural workflows enables that. And yeah, the thing you're talking about, the idiot generator, that was the thing that I started a little over a year ago and was just kind of messing around and trying to see like, could I make a procedural character generator where I can like randomly change the outputs and where the eyes go and how they affect the face and where the mouth goes and even if it has a mouth and how many eyes it has and how tall it is and how long or short the arms are and just all those kind of things. With Houdini, there's this really cool feature called TOPS, or the procedural dependency graph, where you can basically just say, cool, I want to randomize all these different parameters. Like I want to randomize, the number of eyes, or I want to randomize, this or that, or whatever other thing I set up in my chain. And then I could say, make me like 100 different versions with like random different attributes for all this stuff. Then I can wake up in the morning and like check them all out. But it's a really good tool also for if you're like an effects artist working in a studio and you're like, I don't know what the right settings are going to be for this explosion simulation that I'm doing or whatever. And I want to try different setups. So, or even just different random seeds and see how it looks. You set it to run on the farm and then you come back in the studio the next day and you're like, okay, cool. I like this one, so I know that these are the settings that I need to use, and I'll just stick with that and then maybe play with more variants based on that and stuff. Super powerful tool. It's really awesome.
Is that part of your kind of workflow? Like you're trying to reintroduce at least the tool or how it was made into the future projects?
I mean, a lot of the time, what's happening on client projects is they're seeing something that I already did, or I'm making a deck for them. Here's all these examples of ideas for these different shots or effects or whatever. And they're like, cool, we really like this one. We want you to do something like this. Then I'm like, okay, cool. Well, if I don't off the top of my head know exactly how to set that up really easily, I can go back and pull out that file and, like reuse it, and it can save me some time. I highly recommend, like, if you come up with a cool thing, save it as a tool or save it as a HIP file and do a nice organized folder. It's all part of just being an organized person, which I'm not always the best at. I think for a lot of people, I would not recommend like worrying about being too organized. And I would just say, be as messy as you want as you're doing stuff, and then go back after like a certain amount of time and like do like a cleanup pass.
If you're the only person opening up in the morning, it's fine, especially.
Yes, exactly. And that's usually the case. I'm like usually kind of a bit of a one-man band on stuff, or I'm like the only, Houdini person on the project or something. So, but definitely like, yeah, if I'm at a studio or whatever, like they're going to want me to clean up the file so that they can pass it off to someone else if they need to.
Do you continue to play with every tool that comes out, or do you just kind of see tools that come out and go, I'm going to try this one because it fits with what I do? Or does anything ever surprise you and then you put that under your tool belt?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely stuff that surprises me. There's stuff that, I think I'm going to use, and then I end up realizing like, maybe it's a little bit too complex for me, or like that's not necessary for what I want to do. A big one I would say is like the crowds tools for doing like crowd simulations and stuff. I found that to be pretty complicated to set up and stuff. And there's other things that I want to learn too. I mean, there's like this new thing called Apex Script, which is a kind of coding language that you can use for creating procedural rigs and stuff. There's OpenCL, which is being used more and more for writing little bits of code that can run on the GPU, so you can make really efficient setups in Houdini. I probably have tried most of the tools that are in Houdini. I would say I definitely use a lot of them. They just, in the latest version, they introduced a lot of really cool new stuff, including this whole new compositing tool set, which I'm already finding it to be really useful for. Like, you can tweak the brightness and the colors of your different lights in post after you've rendered everything, if you render out these different light passes and stuff, which is like kind of a game changer. But then also you can use it for doing toon shading and things like that, stylized looks. You can also run it live over your renders, like the Blender viewport compositor stuff.
Yes, the composites in it. Yeah, that's great.
So now it's got that kind of stuff in there too, which is like kind of a game changer. But also this compositing stuff is really good as kind of a replacement for like Substance Designer or Substance Painter, and you can kind of use it for that now too. So like more and more over time, Houdini is becoming this kind of like software that you can use for everything. After they added Vellum and stuff, it started getting used more for doing character effects also. And then they were like, well, if we're doing all our characters and effects and stuff in this program, maybe it would be a better option for doing like lighting and scene assembly than using Maya. So a lot of studios are using it for that now. And they're just slowly overtaking more departments, and definitely a big next one that they're trying to do, which is going to be hard. but I think they can do it, is replacing Maya for rigging and animation and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And then they're also, as well, probably going to be able to, for a lot of places, make it so that it's not necessary for them to use another compositor. Like they'll be able to just do Substance Designer, Substance Painter, and like Nuke type stuff or After Effects stuff all in Houdini. And so like it's just a total powerhouse, and the new compositing tools literally opens up a whole new dimension of stuff that you can do. I mean, this new release is like the best release that they've had in a long time because of all that stuff. And that's just scratching the surface. There's a new wrinkle deformer that they added that's like incredible. There's this new NPM solver that can be used for doing all kinds of like complex material physics simulations and stuff, and so much cool stuff. Like they're really killing it. They're positioning themselves to really like, again, take over like the entire CG pipeline potentially one day.
Nice, man. That's exciting. Do you ever see yourself like doing like the realistic water, or do you really just enjoy using those tools and like, you know, melting a dog?
I can totally do that kind of stuff. You know, I think in big VFX studios, they require being like really detail oriented and like working on like a specific really hardcore shot that simulates really slowly and takes a long time to iterate on. And I think I'm a little maybe too like ADHD for that kind of thing. But that said, I would love to get the experience someday of doing that kind of stuff. It's not like my main goal. I definitely feel a certain kind of kinship with those people. And there's this whole big thing, as you know, right now with like, oh, practical effects are so much better than CGI and whatever. And, you know, because they don't understand the process, versus they do kind of understand the process of how practical effects work and stuff, which is why that stuff seems so much more appealing. But like for me, I love going back to like 2000s era VFX shots, CGI stuff in like the Star Wars prequels or the Matrix movies or like Harry Potter, and just seeing like the incredible, dated compared to now, but sometimes even better like VFX. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that like, you know, back then they were putting more money and focus into it, and it was this cool kind of new thing that people were excited about. And now it just like, it's getting shafted so hard in the industry, and it's really unfortunate. Anyway, this is a whole like kind of separate tangent on all that stuff. I wish more average people understood a little bit more of the process of what it's like to do CGI and kind of how it works, because I think they'll maybe appreciate it on the same level that I feel like I can now sort of appreciate all that stuff when it's done really well.
Can we just talk briefly about was it Small Talk, where you did like a combination of live action and you kind of wrote it, shot it, and then added in some really awesome, wacky Christopher Rutledge VFX on top?
Yeah, I did 2 live action shorts for Adult Swim with my friend Tom Goulet, who's an absolute legend, and he did the kind of all the live action stuff for both those shorts, Man's Best Friend with the dog at the dog park, and Small Talk. It's a very different process. I think live action is kind of a subtractive art form where you're taking the entire world that you have around you and limiting it to whatever you want to put in front of the camera lens. And then you're shooting way more stuff than you're actually going to use in the edit. And then animation on the flip side is like an additive art form where you're like building everything exactly as you need it, and you're not creating a ton of extra animation and then cutting that and editing it down. So blending the two, you get an interesting kind of middle ground where like you get extra control and all this kind of stuff, and you can kind of still figure things out later. With the dog park one, it was really fun that all the actors in that are just random people at the dog park, like weren't expecting to be on a thing that day, except for our friend Amelia, who is an actor in it. And I love those kind of like genuine reactions and stuff that you get from people. And I think what's way funnier than a character that's like a really crazy, insane idea for a character that's like totally over the top is like just a guy being a normal guy. And like normal people are weird. Like you ever go on like the subway and overhear a conversation from like random people out of context, and you're like, this is just super funny. Like, yeah, it was awesome working with Tom on those things. And I definitely want to do more stuff like that at some point. The tricky part is just like getting the resources to actually make a live action thing. Like, again, it's really expensive. And that day that you're doing the shoot is like so much pressure and stuff, because like you got to get it right on that day.
What about the tracking of that? Is it all Houdini, or is there an external program?
We didn't do any tracking in that except for one shot. I got my friend Garrett Miguel, who's a really awesome director and compositor, VFX CG person. I think it was the last shot of my face. He did a track in Nuke of it, and then we used that to kind of parent the geometry that I sculpted in VR. Besides that, it was all just like hand keyframed to kind of match I did some of that, and my friend Miguel Diaz, who's a really awesome character animator who I also went to school with, helped with some of the animation in that and did like an amazing job. It's awesome working with people that are better than like you are at the things that you're hiring them for.
Nice, man. It's always good to be on a team where you're not the smartest or the cleverest, because you learn so much from the people around you.
100%. I mean, that's a really big part, I think, of my kind of philosophy when I am in the position of being like the director on something. Okay, I'm going to hire this guy who's an incredible character animator. This is an example like from this short film that I'm working on with Tumblehead. Like I thought on this short film, I was like, I'll do some of the character animation. And then I saw what they were doing and I was like, I can't even touch this. Like I'm not going to get anywhere near this good. But that said, like when I'm asking them to do stuff, like they're going to end up doing stuff that isn't exactly what I pictured. I think it's really important as a director to have a more open mind and be like, maybe they're going to actually come up with something that's actually better. And then that will also keep the morale of the team way higher. Everybody will feel more like ownership over the project, and it will end up feeling like a thing that was made by a bunch of really talented, passionate people. That's a big collaboration instead of a thing that's just done by, you know, one guy who was just sort of like being the dictator on something.
Like the puppeteer and just getting you to press the button.
Exactly. Like nobody wants to be the guy that's just being the bricklayer for someone.
Am I right in saying that you're working on a feature film with SideFX and a Houdini?
Yeah, it's just a short.
Oh, short film, sorry.
Yeah.
That's all done in Houdini, right?
It's all done in Houdini, yeah. So that's being done with the guys that I was just talking about. When I was just in Europe for the past 2 months, hanging out with our friends Yonk in Iceland for a little bit, and then we went to Pictoplasma, and then me and my girlfriend Maddie, who's also an amazing animator, director, person, Maddie Brewer. Brewballs, yeah, you know her. Yeah. She's awesome. We went to Denmark for the month and stayed in Viborg, where there's the school called the Animation Workshop, and then there's this awesome residency called the Open Workshop. And me and Magnus and the Tumblehead team, Jesper, Meta, like a bunch of other amazing people, we're all working on the short film for SideFX that we pitched to them. And there's some talks online about it on the SideFX YouTube. But yeah, basically the whole idea was like, we love Houdini and we want to make a short. You know, we know you guys want to push using it more as like a tool for character animation and stuff. Could we do a short where, you know, we are kind of stress testing it for that? And it serves a bunch of different purposes for SideFX, like, you know, it's helping test out the tools a bunch. Yeah. I think the animation tools and stuff are getting a lot better, partially because we're just giving tons of feedback and actually using it on our own production. It's also, you know, kind of advertising in a way where it's going to show Houdini is a program that can be used for all this stuff, character animation, etc. So we're working on that. It should hopefully be done over the next couple months, but we showed a little preview of it at Annecy, did a talk there, and right after that we finished our Europe trip by going to Paris, where they did the launch event for the new version of Houdini 20.5, and they showed some of it there as well. Yeah, so that's what we're working on, and it's been such a pleasure working with those guys. I mean, that studio Tumblehead has been a huge inspiration for me as well, and we finally met at Annecy 2 years ago for the first time, and it was so crazy. I mean, these animation festivals, it's like such an insane thing. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, this guy lives in Denmark. He might as well live on Mars. I'll probably never meet him. And then I run into him at the Annecy Animation Festival, and 5 minutes later, we're like bringing some beers onto like a little boat that we're gonna rent and drive out in the middle of the lake and jump in the lake. And it's just like so beautiful. Like I never thought that being an animator would be this amazing, going to animation festivals and just meeting people and having friends all over the world and getting to travel. And it's been really awesome, and it's worked out really well.
You know what also comes up a lot is David O'Reilly, and you're a big fan of David O'Reilly.
I'm a huge fan of David O'Reilly, and he's actually my neighbor now.
How did you find out that?
We had mutual friends, animation people, and these are people that you should talk to. Is my friend Sean Buckaloo, who is one of the guys that I learned about all these other guys that work in this studio called Green Street, and they made the show Scavenger's Reign recently that was like super cool. If you guys haven't seen that, you got to check it out. It's gotten a huge kind of cult following just after this first season. It's based on a short film they made on Adult Swim like years ago, and it's on Netflix now. It just got like an Emmy nomination. He was like a mutual friend, Sean Buckaloo, with David O'Reilly, and when we moved here, he was like, oh, you guys are neighbors with David, and I was like, oh shit, cool, well, would love to hopefully meet him at some point. You know, he was dating my friend, and she had like a gallery show, and I showed up to the gallery show and he was there, and I like kind of expected he might be there. And I was like, I'm way too nervous to talk to him. Like, I'm just way too big of a fan. Like, I'll just shit my pants and embarrass myself. Yeah. And then he came up to me and he was like, hey, dude, I love your work, by the way. I'm like a big fan of yourself. And I was like, no way, dude. Oh, my God. Like,
amazing.
It was like the nicest thing ever. But yeah.
You should have said, who are you? Sorry.
that would have been great. Yeah, that would have been really funny.
So when you started in the 3D world, you made a short film that got rejected from a bunch of festivals and things, but then it got picked up through like Vimeo, and then somebody from Adult Swim picked it up and then got in touch.
Yes, exactly. I started school in 2011, and then I took some time off, and I went back to school in 2015, and that's where I really started getting into 3D, and I was learning Cinema 4D at the time, which seemed like, one of the easiest ways to get into 3D. It seemed like a fun option. And the school was teaching us Maya, which is still pretty standard, I think, in most schools. And I started learning Houdini on the way through, and I made this graduation project called The Loaf Zone. It's still one of my favorite things I've ever made. And a big motivation for making it was that I really loved going to animation festivals, and it really opened my mind to like, okay, this is what I want to be doing. Like, people making really cool work that feels like their own work. It doesn't feel like a big studio's work. So that was a big part of the goal with making the film. And then, yeah, I submitted to festivals and it literally didn't get in anywhere. And I was like super bummed about that. But the sort of consolation was that somehow the Vimeo staff pick people saw it and they gave it a staff pick. And then they gave it like a best of the month. Then they invited me to come like screen it at Vimeo, which was coincidentally like in New York where I was at the time. Also around then, I had a friend that was interning at Adult Swim, and she had sent the film to this guy, Dave Hughes, who makes this show on Adult Swim called Off the Air. He also is the guy that is sort of in charge of Adult Swim Smalls, so their sort of short film program that they put these shorts out on YouTube and stuff. He like DM'd me on Vimeo and asked me, like, hey, would you want to make something like for, Off the Air or for Smalls or whatever? And I was like, I would absolutely love that. That sounds amazing. And so the episode that they were doing at the time was called Sound. And so I tried to think of something that fit that kind of theme. And I made this short about a guy with really sensitive hearing. And then that was sort of slotted in between some other shorts, one of which was a short made by Mike Diva, who I was a big fan of, and a short made by Julian Glander, who was on the podcast last week. That was basically how that happened. And then, I ended up making more stuff with Adult Swim later, and it was a really fun kind of fit with them. And I, hopefully will do some more stuff with them again at some point, maybe very soon.
Oh, is that an exclusive? It always gets me thinking with like, I don't know what the name is for it, but kind of the opposite of the polished high-end studio stuff. It's the alternative world to animation. This world is like the upside down world, I love it. But it seems like you've got definitely a big toe in that world.
I mean, definitely, I'm for sure inspired by people that do that kind of stuff. I mean, like, it's weird. I wish that I could make stuff more like this. It's hard just to not like turn on all the crazy settings and like crank my, machine and make stuff look super pretty. But it also is really fun to like recreate like retro aesthetics, both in terms of old CGI looks as well as old like video game type looks and stuff. All that stuff is getting way more accessible and easy to do now that we have Blender and the Eevee render engine and all that kind of stuff, and people using game engines just to make shorts and things sometimes. I love all that stuff.
It's a great time to be creating because there's so many cool like tools, add-on softwares.
Yep. And I would say on that, it's just amazing that in 3D software there's so many good options, and we're so lucky because like it's usually not the case in most sort of areas that you have even one good option.
Yeah, there's so many out there, and I guess just experiment to start with and just find out what works for you.
It's really tricky in the beginning, I think, when you're like, I have this idea for a short that I want to make. You're in the 3D program, you're like, I just don't know how to do anything. And it's like, once you start getting to the point where you can like kind of have fun with it after you've like followed a few tutorials and you're like, kind of know how to do a few things now, don't think about this idea that you have for like a big 5-minute short that you want to make at all. Just be like, I just want to make weird, fun little experiments, make a thing every day for like a while. And then you want to try something more complicated, make a thing in like a week, and then, make a few of those, and then maybe make a thing in like a month, and then just build up that momentum, and you'll ease into making that ambitious project. And it will end up being a lot better than it would if you just tried to make it from the beginning, in which case you'll probably end up just like giving up at some point because it's just way too much work that you're giving yourself from the get-go.
It's a scary world to start getting into, especially if you think you've got to be doing a certain thing, you know.
Totally. I think I'm a big advocate also for, like, if you're curious about learning a software, just go watch some tutorials for it first. Like, don't even download the software. Just check out what is it like to use the software. Like, and I think that was a big thing for me too, was when I was in school, I first learned about Houdini because a professor mentioned it, and he was like, it's like really hard to learn, but if you can learn it, you can get a job anywhere, and Houdini jobs pay super well and whatever. But then I was like looking online and I was like, there are like tutorials for this. Why couldn't I just figure this out? This seems like any other program ultimately in terms of like difficulty of figuring this stuff out. And then, yeah, just started getting into it, and now I'm full on Houdini boy.
I imagine that you're constantly working. Do you finish at the end of the day, like 5, 6 o'clock, and then sign off mentally? Are you up till 4 o'clock? What's the work-life balance? How do you do it? How do you stay alive?
I definitely used to be more like get up early and then I'll work till like 2 a.m. or something. And then the next day I'm just dead, and I'm just like, that's just a pure recovery day. And then the next day I'll go back into like working like crazy. But lately it's been a pretty healthy balance, which has been good. I think a big key is like, make sure to not start off your day by like looking at your phone in bed for like an hour. Like, that's just gonna kill any momentum. Like, you gotta get up, go for a walk, or just like start working immediately, and then you can give yourself like some breaks later on as like some reward for having finished some stuff. Yeah, try to keep it balanced. And it's, I think, important to just remember, like, if you're staying up super late, you are sabotaging yourself, and you're probably not being as efficient with your time as you could be. Like, just working the maximum amount of time, you gotta let yourself rest if you wanna get more work done.
Great advice. Well, Chris, I mean, where can people find you? I know you do tutorials, you've got a Patreon, you teach awesome Houdini, animation, all sorts.
Yeah, so you can find links to all my stuff really easily if you go to christophers.website. I'm on all the socials and stuff, Instagram, LinkedIn. I have HoudiniNerd.com, which is a little resource that I made for people that are trying to learn Houdini, starting tutorials and then stuff to look into if you want to get into more complex stuff. But more importantly, we have a Discord that I started where if you are learning it, and an important thing is to have people you can ask questions to and whatever. So hop in there. We're all really friendly and happy to help. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
What are you up to in the next year? Any exciting news?
Yeah, stay tuned for maybe there's going to be a project at the beginning of next month that I might have worked on that I can't say anything about. This short film that we're making with SideFX, and then I really just want to spend as much time as possible making more shorts. My business partner, Cole Cush, we run this studio together called Grid Machine with another guy. The TV pilot that we spent the entire 2022 making basically is going to finally come out on Adult Swim like August 2nd, I think. We do really want people to see it, so we're really excited. It's just going to come out as like a special basically. Yeah, and also hit me up if you come to any of these cool animation festivals like Pictoplasma or Ottawa Animation Festival I'm planning on being at in September. We're going to show Larry there, and I think we'll hopefully be able to post it online at some point around then too.
Amazing. So if you are going to Pictoplasma, you want to get drunk with Christopher, you want to jump on a boat, jump in some water, just definitely hit him up. But we're excited to see what you're up to, and we wish you all the best, Chris, with anything that you do, man. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me on, and yeah, it's super nice to meet you both, Jamie and Steven.
Well, Chris, have an amazing rest of your day.
Yeah, have a great night, guys. Super nice to meet you, and hopefully we'll run into each other at a festival someday.
And jump on a boat and drink some beers. Who knows, man?
That'd be amazing. Would love that. Yeah.
Take it easy, Chris.
Have a good one, guys.